A fortress in Peru has survived earthquakes for centuries that flatten modern buildings. This is the ancient citadel of Sacsayhuaman, and its walls appear to defy physics. By the end of this story, you will understand the profound engineering secrets that make these stones virtually indestructible. How did a civilization without iron or mortar create masonry more resilient than concrete? What forgotten wisdom is locked within these colossal, interlocking blocks? When you see what humanity built 500 years ago, does it make you question what we consider possible today? The silence at this altitude is profound, broken only by the wind whispering across stones that have stood for half a millennium. You are looking at a wall, but it feels more like a living puzzle. Each block is a unique, irregular giant, some weighing more than 100 tons, yet they fit together with a precision so tight you cannot slip a single sheet of paper between them. This is the foundational paradox of Sacsayhuaman. It is a structure of unimaginable weight, a citadel built from the very bones of the mountain, yet its genius lies in how it was designed to move. Not to collapse, but to dance. When the earth trembles, modern rigid buildings, locked together with brittle mortar and steel, often crack under the strain. But these ancient walls, assembled without a single drop of binding cement, possess a flexibility modern engineering is only beginning to appreciate. The Inca stonemasons did not fight the forces of nature. They invited them in and built a structure that could sway with them. So how do you build a dance floor for an earthquake? It starts with a foundation that understands the ground beneath it is not a slab, but a living, shifting entity. The first secret is not in the stones themselves, but in the ground they chose to stand upon. Before a single block was shaped, the Inca engineers engaged in a profound act of listening. They were not just builders, they were interpreters of the landscape. Their primary goal was to find a place of geological conversation, where the Earth's own strength could be invited into the structure. This meant seeking out solid bedrock, the ancient, unyielding bones of the continent, rather than the loose, shifting soils that cover so much of the terrain. Historical and geological studies suggest Sacsayhuaman was deliberately placed upon a massive natural outcrop of limestone. This was not a random choice. Think of it this way. If you build a house on sand, when the ground shakes, the sand moves independently and your house tumbles. But if you anchor your house directly to a vast, solid slab of stone, when that stone moves, your house moves with it as a single, unified mass. The citadel does not sit on the earth, it is an extension of it. The foundation stones were carefully leveled and fitted to this living limestone base, creating a continuous bond. So when seismic waves ripple through the region, the entire fortress, from its deepest foundations to its highest walls, is designed to sway in unison with the bedrock beneath it. This principle of foundational harmony eliminates the destructive shearing forces that tear modern buildings apart at their base. The Incas understood that to resist an earthquake, you must first become one with the ground it shakes. That foundational bond with the bedrock is only the beginning of the story. Now, look up at the walls themselves. Here, the true genius of Inca engineering is carved in stone, a silent language of resilience written in a million angles. This is the art of polygonal masonry, and to call it a wall is to miss the point entirely. It is a colossal, three-dimensional jigsaw puzzle, where every single piece is a unique, irregular giant. There are no uniform bricks here, no repeating rectangles. Instead, each stone is a multifaceted polygon, with anywhere from 6 to 12 or more sides, each face carved with a subtle, precise curvature. The process was one of breathtaking patience and skill. Stonemasons would spend months, perhaps years, on a single block, using harder stones as hammers and abrasive sand as a grinding tool. they would painstakingly shape each face, not to a flat plane, but to a gentle, complex convexity. They were not carving a block to fit a space, they were carving a block to embrace its neighbors. The final act was a trial by fit. A block would be lowered into place, then lifted again, and the high spots where it contacted its neighbors would be ground down, millimeter by agonizing millimeter. This process was repeated countless times until the fit was so perfect, so intimate, that the stones locked together under their own immense weight. You can see the result today. The seams between these titans are so tight that they disappear to the eye, defying the very idea of a joint. But why go to such insane lengths? Why not just stack nice, square blocks? The answer lies in how forces travel. A straight, horizontal mortar line is a line of weakness. When seismic energy hits a conventional wall, it finds these straight lines and follows them, causing the wall to crack and separate along its weakest points. The polygonal design destroys that possibility. There are no straight lines for the energy to follow. Instead, the shockwaves from an earthquake are forced to travel along a chaotic, zigzagging path through the wall's face. Each irregular interface acts like a tiny baffle, scattering and dissipating the energy, distributing the immense stress dynamically across the entire surface. And the lack of mortar is not an omission, it is the masterstroke. Modern engineers have a term for this: dry stone flexibility. Mortar is rigid. It binds stones into a single, brittle unit that cracks under strain. But these dry-fit stones, while immovable under normal conditions, can actually shift and rotate microscopically against one another when the earth moves. They absorb the energy through countless tiny movements and friction, then settle back into their perfect, interlocked embrace once the tremor passes. It is a wall designed not to stand rigid but to breathe with the mountain. But the design's brilliance goes even deeper than the puzzle-like fit of its stones. Run your gaze along the towering face of the wall, from its base to where the top once stood. You will notice something subtle yet monumental. The wall is not perfectly vertical. It leans inward ever so slightly as it rises. This is not a construction error or the result of centuries of settling. It is a deliberate, calculated feature called a batter or a taper, and it represents a masterclass in intuitive physics. To understand why, think of two shapes: a tall, slender rectangle and a pyramid. If you push against the side of the rectangle, it has a high center of gravity and wants to topple over easily. The pyramid, with its wide base and mass concentrated low, is incredibly difficult to tip. The Inca engineers applied this same principle of a low center of gravity to their walls. By angling each course of stone slightly inward, they effectively pulled the wall's collective weight closer to its core and downward, toward its unshakable foundation. This simple incline transforms the entire structure. When an earthquake's lateral forces slam into the wall, trying to push it over, the taper works against that motion. The energy is not met with a flat, resistant surface that amplifies the shaking upward. Instead, the force is channeled along the angled plane of the stones, redirected downward, and dissipated safely into the massive bedrock below. It is a perfect example of using geometry to outsmart raw power. The wall does not resist the earthquake head-on. It guides the earthquake's own energy into the ground, turning a potentially destructive force into a harmless flow. This seamless integration of taper, polygonal joints, and bedrock foundation creates a unified system, a symphony of stability where every element works in concert to achieve what seems impossible. Yet this monumental puzzle reveals another layer of mastery when you look closer at the individual stones. The visible face of each block, the part that meets the world, is a testament to an almost impossible standard of precision. This technique is known as fine ashlar. The edges of each polygonal face are not just cut, they are meticulously beveled, creating a shallow, inward-sloping border around the perimeter of the stone. When two such stones are placed together, these beveled edges meet, forming a subtle V-shaped channel along the seam. This is far more than an aesthetic choice. That tiny, intentional groove does two critical things. First, it creates a visual shadow line that emphasizes the perfect fit, making the joints appear even finer than they are, a stroke of artistic genius. But second, and more importantly, it acts as a controlled plane of contact. During an earthquake, as the stones shift microscopically against each other, this beveled edge provides a defined surface for movement, reducing stress concentrations and preventing the fragile outer lip of the stone from chipping or spalling off. It is a shock absorber carved directly into the granite itself, but the true secret of these stones is hidden from view, on the side you will never see. Turn a block around and the polished geometric perfection vanishes. The backs of these stones are often left deliberately rough or carved into a rounded, convex bulge. This technique is called cushioning. Why would they spend months perfecting one face only to leave the back looking unfinished? Because they were not building a facade, they were building a body. The rough, rounded backs of the stones were designed to lock into the interior core of the wall, a dense packing of smaller rocks, clay, and earth. Think of it like this. A modern brick wall is a single layer of bricks held together by mortar, but these Inca walls are three-dimensional structures. The beautifully fitted Ashlar face is the skin. The rough, cushioned back is like a set of fingers, gripping and bonding with the muscular core of fill behind it. During a seismic event, this entire assembly, skin and muscle together, is designed to move as one monolithic mass. The energy does not just travel along the surface seams, it is absorbed and dissipated internally, within the very body of the wall, as the core and the facing stones shift together in a unified, flexible dance. The smooth face handles the precise, localized friction, while the cushioned back ensures the entire structure breathes as a single, living entity. This is not merely masonry, it is a form of structural anatomy, giving a wall of stone the resilience of something organic. Yet this technical mastery raises a deeper question, one that moves from stone to soul. Who were the hands that shaped these giants, and what unseen knowledge guided their work? The answer lies not in a single brilliant engineer, but in a civilization that viewed monumental construction as a sacred, collective act of harmony. The Inca Empire operated on a principle called the Mita, a rotational labor tax where communities contributed time and skill to public works as a form of shared duty and worship. This was not forced labor in a modern sense, but a deeply ingrained cultural practice that bound society together. The builders of Sacsayhuaman were likely not slaves, but skilled artisans and farmers fulfilling their turn, bringing generations of local knowledge to the mountain. Their stonemasonry was a craft passed from father to son, a living library of techniques refined over centuries through observation and relentless trial. They learned which stones from which quarries behaved best, how granite fractured along its grain, how to use sunlight and shadow to check for flatness. This was an empirical science written in practice, not on parchment. The Spanish chronicler Garcilaso de la Vega, born of Inca and Spanish heritage, later wrote of the almost ritualistic patience involved. He described teams of men working a single block for months, their progress measured not in days, but in seasons, their goal perfection itself as an offering. This cultural context transforms the wall from a mere feat of engineering into a testament of collective memory. Each perfectly fitted stone represents 1,000 observations, 100 whispered lessons from elders, a shared understanding of the mountain's character. The builders possessed a tactile intelligence, a feel for material that modern engineers might call fracture mechanics or seismic dynamics, but which they understood as the simple, profound language of the earth itself. They did not calculate load distributions with computers. They listened to the rock, and in that quiet conversation, they found the wisdom to build for eternity. The profound patience of the builders is etched into every facet of the stone itself. Look closely at the surface of these granite giants, and you will see a landscape of tiny dimples and striations, a fossilized record of the tools that shaped them. This evidence shatters a common modern assumption that such work would require iron or steel. The Inca stonemasons had none. Their toolkit was deceptively simple, forged from the very materials they sought to master: stone, wood, and bronze. To shape a 100-ton block of granite, they first turned to an even harder stone like andesite or quartzite. Using these as hammers, work teams would pound the surface of the granite in a systematic, relentless rhythm. Each strike was not meant to carve but to pulverize. They were not chiseling away large chunks, they were gradually, grain by grain, reducing the surface to dust. This method, called percussion flaking, created the distinctive pockmarked texture still visible today, a testament to millions of deliberate, controlled impacts. But pounding alone could not achieve the final, glassy smoothness and precise curves. For that, they employed the patient magic of abrasion. They would use sand, often from a riverbed, as a grinding agent. By rubbing a smaller stone back and forth across the granite surface with sand and water in between, they created a natural sandpaper. Over weeks and months, this abrasive paste would wear down the high spots, slowly sculpting the subtle convexities that allowed one stone to perfectly cradle another. The water was crucial, acting as both a lubricant and a carrier to wash away the ground stone particles, revealing a fresh surface to grind again. This was a process measured not in hours, but in human lifetimes, a slow, rhythmic conversation between craftsman and material. Some researchers also point to possible use of thermal shock, a technique where fire is applied to a section of stone and then rapidly cooled with water. The sudden temperature change causes the surface layer to fracture and spall off, allowing workers to remove larger amounts of material before the finer grinding began. While evidence for this at Sacsayhuaman is debated, it speaks to the innovative, experimental spirit of these artisans. They were master observers, learning how stone reacted to heat, to force, to friction. The true goal was never to conquer the stone quickly, but to understand it completely, to persuade it into its final, perfect form. This incremental, observational approach is what made the impossible fit achievable. They would lower a partially shaped block into place, identify the points of contact by the rub marks left behind, then hoist it again to grind down only those specific high spots. This cycle of trial, observation, and adjustment was repeated countless times. The legendary tightness of the joints, where not even a blade of grass could pass, was not a poetic exaggeration, but the direct result of this meticulous, repetitive dialogue between the masons and their material. The slowness was the secret. In a world without power tools, precision was not a function of technology, but of profound, unwavering focus. The strength of the wall, its ability to withstand seismic forces, was born directly from this intimate, grain-by-grain relationship between the builder and the built. The final, perfect fit of each stone is a marvel, but that stone first had to arrive at the mountain. Imagine a granite block the size of a small room, weighing more than 100 tons, resting in a quarry miles away. There are no wheels, no draft animals like horses or oxen in the Andes, and the terrain is a brutal tapestry of steep slopes, rocky gorges, and thin air. Moving these megaliths was a logistical puzzle that dwarfed the shaping process, a feat demanding the coordination of an entire society. How did they do it? The answer lies not in a single machine, but in a symphony of simple physics and human unity. Researchers believe the process began with a fundamental understanding of friction. The most widely supported theory involves a system of earthen ramps. Teams would build temporary roadways of packed earth and clay, leading from the quarry to the construction site. But a block of that mass would simply sink into a soft ramp. The Inca solution was ingenious. They likely lubricated these ramps with a slurry of wet clay, or perhaps even used a type of log pavement. This created a slick, low-friction surface. Then, armies of laborers numbering in the hundreds for a single stone would take position. Using ropes woven from tough grasses or leather, they would attach lines to the monstrous block. The movement was not a constant haul, but a series of controlled, incremental lurches. Teams would use wooden levers, likely made from the tough trunks of the chonta palm, to pry one edge of the stone forward a few inches. Then, as the stone was tilted, round wooden rollers or a bed of smaller, rounded cobblestones could be placed underneath, on the command of a foreman, perhaps signaled by a drum or a chant to synchronize effort. The hundreds of pullers would heave on the ropes in a single, explosive burst of coordinated force. The block would slide forward on its slick bed, perhaps only a foot or two at a time. The rollers would then be repositioned, the levers reset, and the chant would begin again. This was a rhythm of monumental patience, a heartbeat of human effort measured in inches per day. The social organization required was staggering. It meant feeding, housing, and coordinating thousands of people, managing shifts, maintaining tools, and planning the route with meticulous care to avoid impossible gradients. This was not brute force, it was applied physics and masterful project management on a scale that rivals the pyramids. The movement of each megalith was a testament to the Inca Mita system in its most physically demanding form, a collective will so powerful it could make mountains walk. This ancient dance of stone and earth finds a surprising echo in our own cities. To grasp the full magnitude of the Inca achievement, we can place it beside the principles of modern seismic engineering. Today, when architects design a skyscraper for an earthquake zone, they do not simply aim for brute strength. They engineer for controlled movement, for flexibility, and for the intelligent redirection of destructive energy. These are the very concepts with different names that were carved into the mountainside at Sacsayhuaman 5 centuries ago. Consider a foundational modern innovation called base isolation. In some of the world's most advanced structures, buildings are not rigidly attached to the ground. Instead, they rest on massive bearings, often made of layers of rubber and steel, that allow the building to slide or rock independently when the earth shakes. This isolates the structure from the most violent ground motions. The Inca approach was a brilliant macro-scale version of this idea. By meticulously bonding their foundation stones to the living bedrock, they achieved a form of natural base isolation. The entire citadel was designed to move as one with the mountain, a unified mass swaying on a stable, ancient platform. Then there is the concept of ductility and energy dissipation. Modern buildings incorporate elements like specially designed steel frames or dampers that are meant to bend and yield slightly under stress, absorbing seismic energy like a shock absorber. They are built to be tough but also forgiving. Look again at the polygonal joints of Sacsayhuaman. Those perfectly fitted, mortarless seams are not rigid locks. They function as countless microscopic expansion joints and dampers. When force is applied, the stones can shift and rotate minutely against one another, the immense friction between their faces converting the energy of the quake into heat and sound, dissipating it harmlessly. This dry stone flexibility is a masterclass in distributed energy dissipation, with every single interface in the wall contributing to the overall stability. Even the wall's inward taper, its batter, has a parallel in contemporary design. Engineers now understand that structures with a lower center of gravity and tapered profiles are far more stable under lateral loads. The Inca intuition for this geometric truth created a form that naturally channels shaking forces downward into the earth rather than letting them amplify upward. This comparison is not to suggest ancient builders had our textbooks. It is to highlight something more profound. Through deep observation of their environment and relentless material experimentation, they arrived at functionally elegant solutions that modern science, with all its tools, has validated and formalized. They solved the puzzle of seismic resilience not with calculus, but with a conversation between human patience and the memory of stone. The true measure of this ancient wisdom is not found in theory, but in the violent testimony of history itself. The Cusco region sits upon a restless geological crossroads where tectonic plates grind against one another, making major earthquakes not a possibility, but a recurring chapter in its story. And across these centuries, Sacsayhuaman has stood as a silent, unyielding witness, its survival record providing the most compelling proof of its design. One of the earliest and most devastating recorded events struck in the year 1650. This colossal tremor devastated the colonial city of Cusco, which the Spanish had built directly atop and around the existing Inca foundations. Contemporary accounts describe widespread ruin, grand cathedrals and palaces constructed by the conquerors with their towering arches, heavy roofs, and rigid mortar crumbled into rubble. The loss of life and property was immense, a profound tragedy that reshaped the city. Yet, amidst this destruction, the chronicles note a startling contrast. The original Inca stonework, the foundational walls and terraces that predated the Spanish arrival, remained largely intact. The polygonal masonry, anchored to the bedrock and assembled without mortar, had swayed and settled while the rigid colonial structures atop them fractured and fell. This pattern repeated with brutal clarity 3 centuries later in the Great Earthquake of 1950. Once again, modern buildings in Cusco sustained severe damage. Reinforced concrete cracked, brick facades collapsed, and the city faced a massive task of recovery. And once again, the ancient walls of Sacsayhuaman, along with other Inca sites like Ollantaytambo and Machu Picchu, emerged from the dust with little more than superficial scars. This is not coincidence, it is a controlled experiment across time. The Spanish and later builders often used the magnificent Inca foundations as a convenient base, but they built in their own European style, ignoring the seismic wisdom literally beneath their feet. Their walls were vertical, their joints were straight and mortared, their structures were heavy and rigid. When the earth moved, these buildings acted as single, brittle units, and they failed. The Inca walls, however, were designed as dynamic systems. Each historical quake was a real-world stress test, a validation performed by the Earth's own immense power. The evidence is etched into the landscape for anyone to see. In Cusco's city center, you can often observe a colonial Spanish wall built directly upon a course of flawless Inca stones. Look at the seam where they meet. The Spanish masonry above is frequently cracked, its straight lines broken, while the intricate puzzle of Inca polygonal stones below remains seamless. This visible line of demarcation is more than a historical boundary. It is a verdict on 2 opposing philosophies of construction. One sought to dominate the landscape with imposing forms, the other sought to converse with it through flexible design. Sacsayhuaman, therefore, is far more than an archaeological site. It is a living laboratory of resilience, an open-air archive where every major tremor has added another data point, proving that the intuitive science of its creators was not just advanced but timeless. The walls have passed the ultimate test not once but again and again, speaking a language of stability that echoes through the ages. The resilience of these walls speaks not only to technical mastery but to a vision of the universe. To understand Sacsayhuaman fully, we must step beyond engineering and into the Inca worldview, where every stone held a soul and every structure was a prayer made physical. For the Inca, the separation we might see between science and spirituality, between fortress and temple, simply did not exist. Building was a sacred act, a way of weaving human order into the cosmic fabric. This profound interconnection is the key to unlocking the deeper meaning in the Citadel's most striking feature, its iconic zigzagging walls. While we analyze their seismic benefits, the builders likely saw the teeth of a puma. The puma was one of the three sacred animals of the Inca cosmology, representing the middle world of the living, the realm of power, strength, and earthly dominion. Cusco itself was said to be laid out in the shape of a puma, with Sacsayhuaman forming its mighty head. Those monumental, serrated walls were not random battlements. They were the symbolic fangs of this celestial guardian, a permanent statement of protection and sacred authority carved into the mountain. Alternatively, the jagged pattern may have represented the lightning bolts of Ilapa, the powerful god of thunder, storm, and rain. Lightning was both a fearsome force of nature and a vital source of life-giving water, a duality the Inca revered. By mirroring its form in stone, they were perhaps attempting to harness its essence, to draw its power into the very foundations of their empire. This is where function and belief merge into something greater. The sacred geometry dictated by cosmology, the need to create a form that symbolized divine power, coincidentally resulted in a structure of unparalleled physical resilience. The zigzag pattern, chosen for spiritual reasons, created those endless, non-linear joints that baffle seismic energy. The inward taper, which may have held symbolic meaning about connecting the earthly and the heavenly, gave the wall its low center of gravity. The builders were not solving an engineering puzzle in a modern sense. They were fulfilling a cosmological blueprint. Their goal was harmony, Aini, the fundamental principle of reciprocal balance between humanity, the divine, and the natural world. A wall that could withstand the earthquake was not just a safe building, it was a manifestation of this balance. It showed respect for the mountain, for the gods who shook it, and for the people it sheltered. It was a dialogue in stone, proving that human creation could stand with nature, not against it. So when we look at Sacsayhuaman today, we are seeing more than an ancient fortress. We are reading a philosophical text written in granite, a statement that the most enduring strength arises not from domination, but from a deep, reverent conversation with the world. Yet for all we have learned, Sacsayhuaman guards its deepest secrets with a quiet, granite resolve. We can explain the principles of its resilience, but the intimate, step-by-step choreography of its creation remains partially veiled in shadow. This is not a failure of our understanding, but a testament to the profound artistry of its builders, a craft so refined that its finest details evade even our most careful reconstruction. Take the final fitting of those colossal stones. We understand the trial and error process, the lowering and grinding, but how did they achieve such optical perfection across surfaces many feet wide? Some researchers propose the use of guiding templates, perhaps frames made of wood or cord that could be laid over adjacent stones to mark the exact, complex shape needed for the next block. Others suggest a system of string lines and plumb bobs, creating a three-dimensional web in space to guide the shaping. There is compelling logic to these ideas, yet no physical evidence of such tools has ever been found at the site. The stones themselves are the only blueprint we have. Then there is the staggering puzzle of sequence. Look at the largest blocks, those 100-ton behemoths placed high in the walls. Did they build from the ground up, crafting the entire foundation layer first? Or did they employ a method of building the wall in sections, raising earthen ramps higher and higher as they went, sliding each successive course into place from behind? The sheer mass of the topmost stones makes the latter theory daunting, as it would require ramps of immense scale and stability. Some engineers have even floated the possibility of a technique called inclined plane construction, where the wall was built leaning against a temporary support of earth, which was later excavated to leave the freestanding, tapered structure. Each theory has its proponents and its logistical challenges, and the truth may be a combination of methods lost to time. The most humbling realization is that the full recipe, the complete oral tradition passed from master to apprentice, is likely gone forever. The Spanish conquest and the diseases that followed caused a catastrophic rupture in this living chain of knowledge. The master stonemasons took their most guarded techniques with them. What we are left with is reverse engineering a masterpiece, deducing the brushstrokes by staring at the finished painting. And that is precisely what keeps this place so vibrantly alive, not as a relic of a solved puzzle, but as an active frontier of inquiry. Every new laser scan, every ground-penetrating radar survey offers a chance to glimpse another clue. These unanswered questions are not flaws in the story, they are its essential heartbeat. They remind us that the past is not a static fact to be memorized, but a conversation to be joined, a silent dialogue across centuries where the stones ask the questions, and we, with all our technology and curiosity, must strive to listen. Granite is only part of the material story. To truly understand the wall's endurance, we must listen to the stones themselves, to the specific qualities the Inca builders sought out and harnessed. They were not just moving rock, they were curating a library of geological strength, selecting materials with an intuitive grasp of what we now call material science. The two primary actors in this drama are andesite and limestone, each chosen for a distinct role in the Citadel's anatomy. Andesite, a volcanic rock born from the fire of ancient eruptions, is incredibly dense and tough. It possesses a high compressive strength, meaning it can bear immense weight without crushing. This made it the ideal candidate for the colossal, load-bearing megaliths, the skeletal framework of the walls. Limestone, while somewhat softer, offered a different kind of gift. It is more workable, allowing artisans to achieve those impossibly smooth finishes and precise bevels. But perhaps more importantly, limestone has a unique ability to self-heal, in a sense. When exposed to moisture and carbon dioxide in the air, it can form a thin, hard layer of calcite on its surface, a natural patina that actually protects it from further weathering. The Inca understood these inherent personalities. They likely selected specific stones from specific quarries based on more than just proximity. A builder would assess a candidate boulder, reading its grain, testing its sound when struck, judging its resistance to flaking. A stone with a fine, even grain might be destined for a critical corner piece where stress would concentrate. A more massive, coarse-grained block could serve as a deep anchor in the wall's core. This was a form of geological matchmaking, pairing the right stone with the right responsibility. But the genius did not stop at selection. By combining these tough, individual stones into their polygonal, interlocking puzzle, the Inca created something greater than the sum of its parts. Think of modern reinforced concrete, where steel rebar is embedded to handle tensile forces that the brittle concrete cannot. The Inca system achieved a similar, though entirely stone-based, composite effect. The irregular, interlocking joints transfer loads laterally across the entire face of the wall, preventing any single stone from bearing a point load it cannot handle. The wall behaves not as a stack of blocks, but as a single, monolithic sheet of stone woven together by friction and geometry. The andesite provides the brute compressive strength, the limestone contributes workability and surface durability, and the design itself provides the flexibility. This synergy transformed a collection of heavy rocks into a resilient, intelligent structure, a primitive but profoundly effective form of natural engineering where the material and the method became one inseparable source of strength. Beyond the visible geometry and the silent strength of stone, there may have been another dimension to the builder's craft, one felt more than seen. A fascinating hypothesis whispers from the edges of mainstream archaeology, suggesting the Inca did not just shape these stones with tools, but with sound. It is a theory that bridges the gap between their renowned engineering and their deep spiritual practices, proposing that the final, perfect fit was achieved not only through physical grinding, but through a kind of resonant conversation. Some researchers point to a technique that seems almost magical to modern ears: After a block was partially shaped and lowered into its space, a mason might have tapped its surface with a smaller stone, listening intently to the resulting tone. A clear, ringing note could indicate full, solid contact with the supporting stones beneath. A dull, hollow thud, however, would reveal an unseen void, a high spot that needed further grinding. This sonic testing would allow them to pinpoint imperfections they could not see, using the stone itself as a diagnostic instrument. It turns the entire wall into a kind of massive lithophone, an instrument tuned not for music but for perfection. This idea moves from practical testing into the realm of vibrational energy when we consider the scale of the work. Setting a 100-ton block with millimeter precision is a problem of immense friction. Could rhythmic force applied in a specific way help overcome it? Some engineers speculate that coordinated effort, perhaps guided by rhythmic chanting or the beat of drums, did more than just synchronize the laborers. The sustained, collective vibration from hundreds of voices and movements might have transmitted through the ropes and levers into the stone itself. At a certain resonant frequency, this energy could have temporarily reduced the effective friction, allowing the massive block to settle into its final position with a gentle, almost fluid ease. While this remains speculative, it aligns with known Inca cosmology, where sound was not separate from creation. Rituals and ceremonies heavily incorporated music, chant, and rhythmic movement as forces to communicate with the divine and order the world. The act of building a sacred citadel would have been infused with this same spiritual energy. The concept is not entirely foreign to modern material science. We know that certain granular materials, like sand, can exhibit strange fluid-like properties when subjected to specific vibrations, a process known as liquefaction. Could the packed earth of their ramps, or even the microscopic grains at the interface of two granite faces, behave in a similarly responsive way under sustained rhythmic force? It is a compelling thought experiment that reframes the construction site. Instead of a scene of silent, brute force, we might envision a space alive with purposeful sound, a chorus of human voices and rhythmic labor working in harmony to persuade the mountain into a new form. This acoustic hypothesis, while far from proven, opens a profound window. It suggests that Inca engineering was a deeply multi-sensory discipline, where sight, touch, and sound were all tools in the artisan's kit. Their process may have been an intuitive physics, felt in the hands and heard by the ear long before it was ever written in an equation. It reminds us that some of humanity's greatest achievements were born not from a single type of knowledge, but from a holistic way of being in the world, where the line between technical precision and sacred practice was beautifully, and perhaps intentionally, blurred. The silent strength of stone is only half the equation for a fortress meant to endure centuries. A hidden, more fluid force constantly tests any structure: water. In the high Andes, where torrential rains and freezing temperatures are a relentless cycle, uncontrolled water is a slow, insidious destroyer. It can erode soil, saturate foundations, and in the cold, trigger a process called frost heave, where expanding ice literally lifts and cracks stone from below. The builders of Sacsayhuaman understood this threat with profound clarity. Their response was not to fight the water, but to guide it, creating a hidden network of hydraulic engineering as sophisticated as the walls themselves. This was a defense system built not against armies, but against the quiet, persistent work of time and weather. To protect their monolithic walls, they first had to master the mountain's own veins, its water. Archaeological surveys reveal a carefully planned labyrinth of canals, drains, and aqueducts woven through the site. These were not simple ditches, but precisely engineered channels, often lined with stone and graded to control the flow of surface runoff from the intense seasonal rains. The goal was interception and redirection. Before water could pool around the foundations or seep into the soil beneath the walls, these channels would capture it, carrying it safely away from the critical structural zones. This prevented the soil from becoming saturated and soft, which would have created an unstable, shifting base for the immense weight above. Think of it like the gutters and drainage system around a modern house's foundation, but carved into a mountainside on a monumental scale. The Incas were practicing a form of ancient geotechnical engineering, managing hydrostatic pressure long before the term existed, but their system likely went deeper, literally. They may have also addressed groundwater, the water that flows unseen beneath the surface. Some researchers suggest the use of subsurface drains or gravel-filled trenches behind the walls, which would act as French drains, collecting seepage and channeling it away before it could weaken the earthen core or freeze against the stone. This holistic approach to water demonstrates a startlingly complete vision of structural integrity. They knew that a wall's true enemy was not just the lateral shake of an earthquake, but the vertical creep of water and ice. By controlling both surface and subsurface flow, they ensured the foundation remained dry, stable, and uniformly supportive. This principle is paramount in all modern civil engineering, from skyscrapers to bridges, where comprehensive drainage plans are foundational to a structure's lifespan. At Sacsayhuaman, the water management system was the silent partner to the seismic design, a testament to a philosophy that saw the site not as an isolated fortress, but as an integrated component of the living mountain, requiring stewardship of every element, seen and unseen, to achieve true permanence. The year 1533 marks a violent pivot point in the story of these stones. The arrival of Spanish conquistadors in the heart of the Inca Empire introduced a new and brutal form of stress test, one born not of geology, but of human conflict and cultural collision. The conquistadors, fresh from a campaign that had toppled the imperial leadership at Cajamarca, marched into Cusco. They beheld Sacsayhuaman not as a masterpiece of engineering, but as a formidable fortress, a symbol of the power they sought to dismantle. In the ensuing battles, the Citadel became a focal point of fierce resistance, a final stronghold for Inca forces. The Spanish, armed with steel and cavalry, eventually prevailed, but the encounter left them with a profound respect for the site's defensive might and a deep-seated desire to neutralize it. Their subsequent actions, driven by military strategy, religious fervor, and a fundamental misunderstanding of the construction, created a stark, unintended experiment that continues to teach us today. Failing to grasp the seismic wisdom locked in the polygonal joints and tapered walls, the Spanish saw only raw material. To them, these perfectly fitted stones represented a convenient quarry, a source of ready-cut building blocks for their new colonial city rising in the valley below. They embarked on a systematic campaign of dismantlement. Using levers, ropes, and sheer force, they pried the upper courses of stones from the mighty walls. The goal was twofold: to erase the physical symbol of Inca power that loomed over their new settlement, and to harvest the magnificent Ashlar blocks to construct churches, palaces, and mansions in the Spanish style. This was more than construction. It was an act of symbolic replacement, building a new European order literally from the bones of the old. The tragedy is that in their haste and their different architectural tradition, they destroyed the very thing that made the stones so valuable, their engineered relationship to one another. A stone that was once part of a flexible, interlocking puzzle was now just a heavy, oddly shaped brick. The result of this great dismantling is a landscape of profound and telling contrast, a historical irony written in mortar and ruin. In the colonial center of Cusco, you can walk streets where the foundations are pure, seamless Inca stonework. Rising directly from this ancient base are the walls of Spanish-era buildings. The visual difference is unmistakable. The lower sections, the original Inca foundations, show no seams, no cracks, their polygonal joints as tight as the day they were set. But above them, the Spanish masonry tells a different story. The stones, many of which were once part of Sacsayhuaman's upper walls, are now held together with lime mortar and arranged in neat horizontal courses. And on these walls you frequently see cracks, repairs, and signs of settlement. This dichotomy was brutally exposed during the major earthquakes that have shaken Cusco over the centuries. The colonial structures, with their rigid bonds and straight lines, suffered severe damage, their walls fracturing along the mortar joints. Yet, time and again, the Inca foundations upon which they were built remained steadfast, having swayed with the bedrock as they were designed to do. This historical reuse serves as a controlled, real-world experiment, one that underscores the seismic superiority of the original Inca technique. The Spanish, by repurposing the stones but not the method, inadvertently created the perfect test. They took the same material, granite from the same quarries, and placed it in the same seismic zone. The only variable they changed was the construction philosophy. Their European tradition valued verticality, right angles, and rigid mortar, creating monolithic structures that resisted movement until they catastrophically failed. The Inca philosophy valued flexibility, interlocking geometry, and dynamic mass, creating structures that absorbed and dissipated movement. The outcome, written in the cracked facades of colonial churches and the intact foundations beneath them, is clear. The Spanish buildings, despite being centuries younger, have required constant repair and reinforcement. The remaining Inca walls of Sacsayhuaman, though partially plundered, have required none, standing resilient through every subsequent tremor. This is not merely an archaeological observation, it is a lasting testimony. It proves that the strength of Sacsayhuaman was never in the individual stones alone, but in the silent, brilliant conversation between them, a language the conquerors could not hear, and in their repurposing tragically broke. The silent testimony of history now meets the quiet hum of modern machines. To understand these walls without dismantling their legacy, researchers today wield a suite of non-invasive tools that see with new eyes, mapping secrets light and radar cannot reach. At the forefront is three-dimensional laser scanning, a process where millions of laser points are fired at the wall's surface in a precise grid. Each point returns a coordinate, building a digital point cloud so accurate it can measure the bevel on a stone's edge or the microscopic undulations of a joint. This is not a simple photograph, it is a perfect, measurable twin of the wall, frozen in digital space. Alongside this, photogrammetry uses hundreds of overlapping photographs from drones and cameras, stitching them together with software to create another type of highly detailed three-dimensional model. These surface maps are then given depth by ground-penetrating radar, by sending pulses of radar energy into the Earth and measuring the echoes that bounce back from changes in material. This technology acts like a sonogram for the ground. It can reveal the hidden profile of foundation stones, map the extent of backfill material behind the walls, and even detect buried drainage channels or earlier construction phases invisible to the eye. This combination of tools allows scientists to measure what was once only felt, the precise angles of the inward taper, the exact curvature of each polygonal face, the true depth of the stone's bond with the bedrock. They can detect micro-displacements, shifts of mere millimeters that have accumulated over centuries, telling a story of how the wall has settled and swayed through countless tremors. This data becomes the raw material for a powerful kind of digital experimentation. Engineers feed these precise measurements into sophisticated computer programs to create finite element models. Think of it as building the wall again, but inside a supercomputer where every stone, every joint, and the soil beneath it are represented as millions of tiny interconnected elements. Once this digital twin is complete, they can subject it to simulated earthquakes of varying magnitudes and directions. They can apply forces, measure stresses, and watch how the energy flows through the virtual structure in ways that would be impossible to observe in the real world. What emerges from this high-tech analysis is a powerful validation. The models quantify the intuitive genius observed for centuries. They show how the polygonal joints create a labyrinth for stress, how the taper effectively channels lateral forces downward, and how the entire assembly exhibits a remarkable capacity for energy dissipation. The computer confirms that the Inca system is not just durable, it is exceptionally efficient, a naturally optimized structure that modern engineering software, in essence, rediscovers and admires. This technological dialogue bridges eras, using the language of ones and zeros to finally articulate the silent, resilient wisdom written in stone. The digital models confirm what the mountain has always known, but a new question now presses upon these ancient stones. Who will be their guardians in the century to come? For Sacsayhuaman is not a static museum piece frozen in time. It is a living, breathing piece of cultural heritage, facing pressures its builders never envisioned. Every day, the hum of buses replaces the rhythm of chants as thousands of visitors from across the globe walk its terraces. This tourism is a double-edged sword. It brings vital awareness and economic support, but each footstep, each touch, each breath in the thin Andean air contributes to a slow, cumulative wear. The environmental pressure is constant, from wind erosion to the subtle shifts caused by the very climate changes affecting our planet. Preserving this site is no longer about leaving it alone. It is about managing an incredibly delicate balance between access and protection, between global wonder and local stewardship. The task falls to a dedicated cadre of Peruvian archaeologists, conservators, and engineers, who act as modern-day interpreters of this stone language. Their work is a fascinating blend of ancient insight and cutting-edge technology. They consult historical records and oral traditions passed down through local communities, seeking clues about original construction techniques and the spiritual significance of certain areas, which informs how they approach restoration. A misplaced repair using modern cement, for example, could create a rigid point that would crack during the next earthquake, undoing the very flexibility that defines the site. Instead, they often use traditional, compatible materials like clay-based mortars in non-structural areas, or employ the same principle of careful stone shaping to fit replacement blocks. They use the three-dimensional scans and ground-penetrating radar not just for study, but for monitoring, creating baseline maps to detect any new minute cracking or settlement over time. Their goal is preventative, to understand the wall's health so they can address small issues before they become catastrophic failures. This is preservation as a conversation, a continuous dialogue with the past to ensure it has a future. And central to this effort are the local communities of the Cusco region. For them, Sacsayhuaman is not just an archaeological zone, it is part of their living landscape, woven into their identity, stories, and annual rituals like the Inti Raymi, the Festival of the Sun, which is still celebrated within its walls. They are the inheritors of the intangible cultural memory, the keepers of the stories, and the respect for the place that no textbook can fully capture. Modern preservation increasingly recognizes that these community members are not just neighbors to the site, they are its most vital custodians. Their deep-rooted connection and traditional knowledge provide an essential layer of understanding that pure science cannot replicate. They remind the world that this is not merely a puzzle of engineering, but a sacred space. Preserving Sacsayhuaman, therefore, transcends maintaining physical stones. It is about safeguarding a continuum of knowledge, a bridge of memory that links the artisans who shaped the granite to the children who play in its shadow today. It is an act of humility, acknowledging that we are temporary stewards of a legacy meant to endure for 1,000 more years, a testament that the true strength of a culture lies not only in what it builds, but in what it chooses collectively to protect. The principles locked within Sacsayhuaman stones are not relics, they are blueprints. Across Peru and in earthquake zones worldwide, a quiet revolution in architecture is underway, one that looks to the past to build a safer future. This is not about copying ancient aesthetics, but about rediscovering a functional wisdom we once possessed, a practice some call Archeo-Mimicry. Modern engineers, facing the same seismic threats, are increasingly turning to nature and history for inspiration, and the Inca solutions offer profound lessons in resilience. The goal is no longer to build rigid fortresses against nature's force, but to design structures that can yield, absorb, and dance, just as those ancient walls do. In Lima, a city perched on the volatile Pacific Ring of Fire, contemporary architects are explicitly referencing these ideas. Some new buildings employ base isolation systems that are the technological grandchildren of Sacsayhuaman's Bedrock bond, using advanced rubber and steel bearings to let a skyscraper sway safely atop a shaking foundation. Others experiment with reinforced concrete frames designed for ductility, meaning they can bend and flex without breaking, echoing the dry stone flexibility of polygonal joints. But the influence goes deeper than hidden engineering. The very form of modern seismic-resistant design often mirrors those ancient intuitions. Look at a tapered skyscraper, wider at the base and narrower at the top. This is not merely a stylistic choice, it directly lowers the building's center of gravity, improving its stability against lateral winds and earthquake forces, a principle visibly embodied in the inward lean of Sacsayhuaman's ramparts. Even the concept of using interlocking, modular components finds new life. Prefabricated building systems now use large, precisely engineered panels that lock together, creating monolithic strength through geometry and friction, much like the giant stones of the Citadel. This biomimicry, or more accurately, this cultural mimicry, creates a direct, unbroken lineage. It connects the artisan who shaped a granite curve with a stone hammer to the engineer who models stress distributions on a supercomputer. Both are solving the same eternal puzzle: how to create safe shelter on an unstable Earth. The most powerful examples are often found in community projects in the Andes themselves, where NGOs and local builders collaborate on new housing using updated versions of traditional techniques. These projects might combine reinforced earthen walls with flexible timber frames, applying the ancient logic of distributed strength and energy absorption with modern, affordable materials. This approach does more than create physical safety. It reconnects communities with a tangible heritage of resilience, making the wisdom of the ancestors immediately relevant to survival today. When a new school or hospital in a seismic zone is designed to sway with a tremor rather than fight it, that is Sacsayhuaman's legacy in action. It proves that the most advanced solutions are sometimes not about inventing something new, but about remembering something profoundly old and listening to the quiet, enduring conversation between human ingenuity and the memory of stone. The scale of this project was an empire in motion. To grasp the true purpose of Sacsayhuaman, we must look beyond the silent stones to the living, breathing society that raised them. This was not merely a construction site, it was the beating heart of a nation-building exercise, a socio-economic engine of unprecedented scale in the pre-Columbian Americas. The mobilization required was staggering, involving tens of thousands of individuals from every corner of the Tahuantinsuyu, the land of the four quarters. This was made possible by the Mita, a rotational labor system that formed the backbone of Inca civic life. Far from a simple tax or a burden, the Mita was a reciprocal covenant between the state and its people. In exchange for their labor on imperial projects like roads, terraces, and temples, the state provided security, organized festivals, and maintained storehouses of food and goods for times of hardship. When a community received the call to send workers to Cusco for a season, it was a point of pride and duty. A farmer from the coastal valleys, a herder from the high altiplano, and a forester from the eastern slopes would find themselves working side by side on the same mountain. They shared techniques, told stories, and forged a common identity under the banner of a shared, monumental goal. This constant circulation of people was a masterstroke of social engineering. It dissolved purely local loyalties and wove a new, imperial consciousness, making a subject from a distant province feel a personal stake in the glory of the capital. The project site itself became a microcosm of the empire, a bustling, temporary city where diverse languages and customs met, unified by the rhythmic work of moving mountains. This was nation-building quite literally in stone. The organizational capacity on display was a primary demonstration of state power. Coordinating the supply chains alone was a monumental feat. While the workers fulfilled their Mita service, their home communities were responsible for supporting them, sending food, clothing, and tools along the vast Inca road network to the site. This created a continent-wide economic stimulus, stimulating agriculture, textile production, and tool-making in regions far from Cusco. The project also functioned as a vast technical university. Young men arriving as simple laborers could learn advanced stonemasonry, engineering, logistics, and management from master craftsmen. They would then take these skills back to their home regions, elevating local construction and infrastructure, further binding the empire together through shared technological standards. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, the completed citadel stood as the ultimate symbol of this hard-won unity. Its overwhelming, visible permanence was a daily reminder to every citizen, whether a visiting provincial leader or a local farmer, of the empire's divine right to rule, its organizational might, and its promise of collective security. The walls were a declaration. They said the state could harness the chaos of human diversity and the raw power of nature to create order, beauty, and safety. So while its zigzag ramparts were designed to deflect earthquakes, its greater purpose was to withstand the tremors of disintegration, to forge one people from many, and to build an idea of empire so solid it felt carved into the very bones of the earth. But the stones do not only speak to the earth, they also whisper to the sky. The staggering precision of Sacsayhuaman's masonry invites a profound question. Were the builders aligning their fortress not just with the bedrock below, but with the cosmos above? A growing body of research suggests the answer is yes, that the citadel's design may incorporate deliberate astronomical alignments, weaving celestial cycles directly into its granite blueprint. This theory proposes that certain walls, doorways, or carefully placed markers within the complex were oriented to frame specific astronomical events, such as the rising or setting sun on the June and December solstices, or the position of important stars like the Pleiades constellation, which held deep significance in Inca agriculture and cosmology. Imagine standing at a precise point on the northern ramparts as dawn breaks on the shortest day of the year. If the theory holds, you would witness the sun's first light slicing perfectly along the edge of a distant, man-made channel or striking a particular niche in the zigzag wall. This would not be a coincidence but a calculated feature, turning the entire fortress into a colossal stone calendar and observatory. For a culture that revered the sun god Inti as a divine ancestor and life-giver, such alignments would have been essential, a way to anchor their most important earthly power center to the immutable rhythms of the heavens. The potential for these celestial sightlines adds a breathtaking layer of intentionality to the construction. It means the stonemasons were not just shaping stones to fit each other, they were positioning them to capture specific moments of light from bodies millions of miles away, a task requiring generations of precise celestial observation and recording. This transforms our understanding of the site's purpose. Sacsayhuaman was likely far more than a military stronghold or a ceremonial center. It was a physical model of the Inca universe. In their worldview, the stability of the empire, the success of the harvest, and the order of society were all dependent on maintaining a sacred balance, or aini, with the natural and cosmic worlds. A fortress that could withstand earthly tremors was a powerful symbol, but a fortress that also mirrored the orderly motion of the stars and sun was a divine instrument. It physically demonstrated the connection between the king, the Sapa Inca, who was considered the son of Inti, and the celestial source of his authority. The engineering that made the walls earthquake-proof was one half of a grand equation. The astronomical alignments were the other. Together, they created a holistic structure in harmony with every scale of force, from the shifting tectonic plate beneath it to the distant, guiding lights above it. This integration suggests the builders operated with a unified theory of stability, where true resilience came from synchronizing human creation with the most fundamental patterns of the universe itself. The silent alignment with the stars was mirrored by a profound impact on the human spirit. While the walls of Sacsayhuaman were engineered to withstand physical force, their most immediate power may have been psychological, a fortress built first in the mind. For any subject of the empire or envoy from a rival culture approaching Cusco, the citadel was not merely a structure, it was a statement carved in impossible scale. Imagine cresting the final ridge after weeks of travel, your eyes lifting to a horizon now dominated by these colossal, zigzagging ramparts. The stones, each larger than your home, fit together with a perfection that defied your understanding of construction. There were no seams, no gaps, no visible means of support. The sheer, overwhelming mass combined with incomprehensible precision would trigger a deep, instinctual awe. This was the architecture of the sublime, designed not just to house soldiers, but to reshape perception itself. It communicated a simple, terrifying message. The entity that built this does not operate under the same limitations as you. Their mastery over the very bones of the earth is absolute. This psychological effect was a deliberate and calculated layer of defense. In a world where warfare often began with assessments of strength, Sacsayhuaman presented an image of unassailable permanence. A potential adversary would look upon those walls and be forced to confront a daunting calculation. If they could move mountains and make stone flow like water, what other unimaginable powers might they wield? The fortress' reputation for being earthquake-proof, likely known and witnessed by neighboring peoples, would have elevated it from a stronghold to a supernatural phenomenon. It wasn't just strong, it was in league with the gods of the earth itself. Why lay siege to a mountain that the gods themselves could not shake? This perception of invincibility was a strategic asset as tangible as any store of spears or food. It served to deter conflict before the first arrow was ever fired, saving the empire immense resources and preserving stability. The psychological fortress thus worked in perfect concert with the physical one. The engineering marvel provided the undeniable proof, the raw evidence of superiority. The human mind, witnessing it, did the rest, weaving narratives of divine favor and unconquerable might. The stones were silent, but they spoke directly to the deepest human fears and respects for power, for the divine, and for the unknown. In this way, Sacsayhuaman's greatest defense may have always been the story it told, a story of such overwhelming authority that it convinced generations to choose peace over the futile chaos of challenging the unmovable. The silence of these stones has a way of inviting the loudest of speculations. In our modern era, faced with something so profoundly advanced for its time, a persistent narrative sometimes emerges, one that seeks to explain the inexplicable by looking not to human history but to the stars. It is a story that suggests these walls are too perfect, too precise, to be the work of hands without iron or wheels. The theories whisper of ancient astronauts wielding laser tools, or of a lost super science from a mythical continent. While born from a genuine sense of wonder, these ideas, however captivating, ultimately do a profound disservice to the very people whose legacy we are trying to understand. They create a comforting mystery by removing human agency, suggesting that such mastery could only come from somewhere else, someone else. But the truth, grounded in evidence and respect, is far more compelling. It asks us to look not to the cosmos for answers, but to the culture, the patience, and the observable, tactile genius of the Inca civilization itself. The evidence against these external theories is written in the stones, the tools, and the historical record. We have found the quarries littered with partially shaped blocks and the simple stone hammers used to pound them. We have the accounts from early chroniclers who described the methods, however imperfectly, as they witnessed them or learned of them from Inca descendants. We have the living tradition of Andean stonemasonry that continues to this day, using similar principles of trial fitting and abrasion. There is no need for a deus ex machina of alien intervention when the entire, gradual human process is archaeologically visible. The suggestion of lasers or impossible technology ignores the most powerful tool the Inca possessed: time. A society that measured major projects in generations, not fiscal years, could achieve through relentless, incremental effort what seems impossible to us in our rush. They did not need to cut the stone, they persuaded it, grain by grain, over years. This is not a mystery of missing technology, but a testament to a different relationship with time and material. To attribute Sacsayhuaman to extraterrestrials or a lost superculture is, in a subtle way, to diminish the Inca. It strips them of their rightful credit as one of history's most ingenious engineering cultures. It implies that indigenous people of the Americas were incapable of such innovation on their own, a notion that modern archaeology and ethnohistory thoroughly reject. The Inca Empire was a sophisticated, administratively brilliant society that mastered agriculture, road building, astronomy, and social organization across some of the most challenging terrain on Earth. Their stonemasonry was the pinnacle of that systemic genius, not an anomalous artifact from beyond. The real story is one of human achievement at its most resilient. It is about a civilization that, through deep observation and the slow accumulation of empirical knowledge across centuries, learned to speak the language of the mountain. They understood fracture mechanics through the sound of a tap, seismic dynamics through the memory of past tremors, and structural engineering through the intuitive physics of friction and geometry. This was a high science, but it was an embodied practical science, passed from master to apprentice in a continuous chain of learning. That chain was tragically broken by conquest and disease, which is why the finest details feel lost to us, creating the vacuum that wild theories rush to fill. But the vacuum is an illusion of historical rupture, not a proof of extraterrestrial help. Choosing the human story over the mythical one does not make Sacsayhuaman less amazing. It makes it infinitely more so. It transforms the site from a potential alien landing pad into a monument to human potential. It celebrates what a community, united by a shared vision and cultural discipline, can accomplish. It reminds us that genius is not always about having the most advanced tool, but about having the deepest understanding of the tools you do have, and the patience to use them in concert with the world around you. The walls stand not as a riddle from outer space, but as the ultimate signature of a people who looked at a mountain and saw not an obstacle, but a partner. And that partnership, forged in stone and time, is a truth more inspiring than any fiction. 500 years from now, what will our own cities say about us? The silent testimony of Sacsayhuaman is not merely a record of ancient technique, but a mirror held up to our modern values. In an era defined by speed, by quarterly reports and rapid development cycles, this citadel built across generations whispers a different set of priorities. Its legacy is a lesson in humility, asking us to reconsider what we consider true progress. The builders did not ask how fast they could complete a wall. They asked how long it could endure. This shift in perspective, from building for decades to building for centuries, is perhaps the most challenging idea the ruins present to our contemporary world. It champions a deep, patient understanding of local materials and conditions over imported, one-size-fits-all solutions. Every stone was chosen for its relationship to that specific mountain, shaped by the very climate and seismic personality it was meant to withstand. There were no generic construction materials shipped across oceans, only a profound conversation with the immediate environment. This localized intelligence stands in quiet contrast to our globalized supply chains, where identical glass and steel boxes rise in deserts and rainforests alike, often fighting their surroundings rather than flowing from them. The lesson is not that we must abandon modern materials, but that we might rediscover the wisdom of designing from the ground up, of letting a place teach us how to build for it. It calls for an architecture of listening where the first tool is not a bulldozer but observation. The builders embodied a value almost foreign today, the supremacy of quality over speed. Their measure of efficiency was not man-hours per block, but the number of generations a wall would shelter. This long-term thinking required a cultural stability and a shared vision that transcended individual lifetimes. A master mason might only see a small portion of the grand design completed, yet he worked with the unwavering faith that his grandchildren would witness its glory. This intergenerational pact is a stark counterpoint to our often short-term political and economic cycles, where the consequences of our choices are comfortably deferred to a future we feel no responsibility toward. Sacsayhuaman asks us a simple, haunting question. When the people of the 26th century uncover the foundations of our greatest achievements, what will they deduce about our wisdom? Will they find evidence of careful stewardship, of structures designed to adapt and endure alongside the community and the planet? Or will they sift through the remnants of haste, through materials chosen for cheapness and convenience, now brittle and failed? The Citadel does not demand we return to pounding stone with rock. It invites us to reclaim the spirit behind the method, the reverence for permanence, the respect for material, and the humble understanding that the best human creations are those that earn their place in the landscape, not by dominating it, but by joining its timeless conversation. Let us take a walk along these ramparts together, not with our feet but with our eyes, turning the concepts we have explored into a visible field guide. Direct your gaze to the most striking feature, the monumental zigzag pattern of the walls. These are not random battlements. Each protruding angle, each sharp recession, creates a series of indestructible buttresses. When seismic energy races toward a straight wall, it travels unimpeded along its length, gathering destructive force. But here, the energy slams into a corner. It is fractured, split, and redirected down one jagged arm of the zigzag, only to be met by another corner and another. The force is dissipated in a chaotic labyrinth of stone, a perfect physical manifestation of how geometry baffles raw power. Follow one of these zigzagging lines downward, and you will notice how the entire structure seems to grow from the earth itself. This brings us to the inward taper. Stand back and view the wall from a slight angle. You will see it does not rise perfectly vertically, but leans subtly inward, like a mighty tree with roots wider than its branches. This gentle slope is the visual signature of a low center of gravity, the architectural principle that makes a pyramid so stable. It is the reason these walls channel an earthquake's lateral push downward into the bedrock instead of amplifying it upward toward collapse. Now let your focus settle on a single, breathtaking detail, the legendary Stone 12. It is a behemoth, estimated to weigh over 120 tons, a monolith that seems to defy the very possibility of movement. Yet there it rests, perfectly cradled by its neighbors. Look at the seams around it. They are not gaps, but lines of such precise contact that they appear drawn by a master artist. This is the ultimate expression of polygonal masonry. Every face of this giant and every face of the stones that embrace it is a unique, gently curved plane. They fit together not like bricks but like three-dimensional puzzle pieces interlocking in every direction. Run your hand along the seam in your mind. That flawless join is a dry joint, a masterfully engineered interface that allows for microscopic movement during a tremor, absorbing energy through friction before settling perfectly back into place. It is flexibility carved in granite. Move along the wall, and you will find countless other examples of this perfect fit. Search for a junction where three or more stones meet. Notice how the complex, multi-angled cuts create a star-like pattern. There is no single, straight, continuous line for a crack to propagate through. This is the seismic secret made visible, a network of interlocking teeth that hold the entire structure together as a unified, flexible mass. Finally, cast your eyes downward to the base of the walls and across the terraces. Look for the subtle channels and grooves carved into the stone paving. These are the silent guardians against time, the drainage systems. They were engineered to capture rainwater and meltwater, channeling it swiftly away from the foundations. By keeping the soil beneath the walls dry and stable, they prevented erosion and the destructive freeze-thaw cycle that can slowly pry even the mightiest stones apart. This comprehensive network reminds us that resilience is holistic, defending against the slow creep of water as diligently as the sudden shock of the quake. Each feature you now recognize, the zigzag, the taper, the polygonal fit, the drainage, is not an isolated marvel. They are instruments in a single symphony of stability. Seeing them together, understanding their purpose, transforms this ancient fortress from a mysterious ruin into a readable text. The language is one of physics and foresight, written in a stone alphabet for anyone who learns to look. The stones have not yet surrendered all their stories. As the sun sets over the zigzag ramparts, a new generation of researchers arrives, armed not with stone hammers, but with algorithms and molecular probes. The future of understanding Sacsayhuaman lies in this powerful fusion of disciplines, where archaeology meets data science, geology partners with climatology, and cultural memory dialogues with artificial intelligence. One of the most promising frontiers is the application of advanced pattern recognition software. Researchers are now feeding high-resolution, three-dimensional scans of the walls into machine learning programs. These algorithms can analyze millions of data points, searching for subtle, repeating patterns in the stonework that the human eye might never detect. Could there be a hidden logic to the placement of the largest megaliths? Might the software uncover a standardized sequence in the seemingly unique polygonal shapes, revealing a deeper, codified system of design? This computational archaeology could finally decode the builder's invisible blueprint, moving us from admiring their precision to understanding the underlying rules that made it possible. Simultaneously, material science offers another key. Portable X-ray fluorescence scanners and advanced spectroscopy can now be taken directly to the site. By analyzing the elemental fingerprint of the stones, scientists can trace each block back to its exact quarry with near certainty. This creates a map of material movement, revealing the intricate supply chains and logistical choices of the empire in stunning detail. We could learn which quarries were reserved for foundational stones versus decorative elements, and how resource management shifted over the decades of construction. This data transforms the wall from a static monument into a dynamic economic story, written in the very chemistry of the rock. Yet this research unfolds against a pressing new challenge: the accelerating impacts of a changing climate. Increased rainfall intensity, more frequent freeze-thaw cycles, and shifting weather patterns pose unprecedented threats to the site's delicate equilibrium. The very drainage systems that have worked for centuries may now be overwhelmed. preservation is no longer just about managing visitors. It is about adapting to an environment the builders never anticipated. Interdisciplinary teams of hydrologists, geotechnical engineers, and conservators are now modeling water flow under new climate scenarios, designing subtle, non-invasive interventions to ensure the ancient defenses against water continue to function for another 500 years. This global collaboration is what makes the next chapter so exciting. Peruvian archaeologists work alongside satellite imaging experts to monitor ground subsidence. Structural engineers run seismic simulations using data provided by historians studying colonial earthquake records. Each field illuminates a different facet of the same magnificent puzzle. The enduring, unanswered questions are what keep this place alive as a laboratory for the human mind. How did they achieve the final, perfect fit? What was the exact sequence of construction from the first stone to the last? The pursuit of these answers does more than satisfy historical curiosity. It actively shapes the future. Every insight gleaned from this ancient citadel about distributed load, energy dissipation, and sustainable material use directly informs how we design resilient cities today. Sacsayhuaman proves that the most vital blueprints for our future may not be in front of us, but patiently waiting in the past, asking only that we learn how to read their silent, enduring language. The earthquake-proof walls of Sacsayhuaman stand not as a defiance of physics, but as a masterful demonstration of its principles, understood through keen observation and applied with unparalleled skill. Our journey has taken us from the silent dialogue between stone and bedrock to the celestial alignments etched in granite, revealing a civilization that saw no separation between fortress and temple, between engineering and prayer. This was a holistic philosophy of creation where material science, logistics, social organization, and spiritual belief were woven into a single, unbreakable fabric. The stones teach us that true resilience is not about brute force but about harmony. It is about listening to the mountain, understanding the path of water, and designing structures that move with the earth rather than against it. It is about the kind of patience that measures progress in generations, and the kind of craftsmanship that finds perfection in the fit of a seam no wider than a breath. This long-term vision, this reverence for material and place, stands as a quiet challenge to our own era of rapid consumption and disposable design. As we confront modern challenges, from building cities in seismic zones to creating sustainable communities, the silent wisdom of these ancient masons offers a profound blueprint. They remind us that the most advanced solutions are often elegantly simple, born from deep observation and respect for the world we inhabit. Their legacy is not locked in the past, but waiting in the stones, ready to inspire anyone willing to learn its language. If this exploration of ancient genius resonated with you, we would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Your insights continue this timeless conversation. And if you are curious to delve deeper into the mysteries history has left for us to solve, consider subscribing for more journeys into the forgotten corners of human achievement.